there's this special connection as a human observer of these spaces that I want to try and share these stories of. Mm-hmm. So the process of making the music, again, I don't know if I'm directly answering your question, but the process is really trying to capture those stories of these places that only exist for a fleeting time and then are gone.
Welcome to Wild Resonance, a show where we have a series of conversations with artists, bioacousticians, soundscape ecologists, and generally explore themes related to the natural sounds of the natural world. Today, I'm really excited to have Hunter Skowron here. I consider you to be not just a musician and artist, but almost like a naturalist. I think one of the first times we hung out, you took some friends of ours like deep into the hills of Santa Barbara to explore some hot springs. Yeah, and I just feel like over the years, the times we've spent together, a lot of them have involved these excursions, and so it's really exciting to me when some of your more recent music, which it's been a few years now, I think, right? But you started to incorporate more field recordings.
Yeah, definitely.
And so the name of the project that we're going to be talking about primarily today, because you do so many things, is your FM Forest project, and this is the third LP.
This is the fourth now.
LP?
Yeah. It's a little shorter on this one, lengthwise, but yeah, it's solid body of work, and yeah, we're on 4 now, which is pretty crazy to think about.
It's a beautiful record, and they're all very beautiful. And when we spent more time together when you were living in New York, and you went back to Portland how many years ago?
A little more than 10 now. Yeah,
wow.
I moved out then January of 2014. Okay. So yeah, been out there for a little over a decade.
And so, of course, you naturally had way more access to, or easier access to nature than you do in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So how did you come to this particular project? What was the vision?
Well, the vision with FM Forest particularly is what you're kind of saying is like the access to nature in Portland is so special. I'm not living in Portland anymore, but I'm close enough that it's the same thing. You can drive 25 minutes and be in the middle of nowhere with no one around, and just spending a lot of time out there. Even in Portland, there's Forest Park, which is a gigantic park where you can just get lost in the woods in the middle of the city. And during the pandemic, I just was spending so much time out there because it's one of the places you can go and be in the woods by yourself and not deal with anything. You're just in your own world. And with exploring Forest Park and places around there, you can go off the trail and find a stream or a little body of water, and it's beautiful. It sounds so nice. There's just its own little universe in this one little spot. So I started going there, and then I started bringing a little field recorder out there and just recording sounds and whatever was going on. I would bring that home and listen to it and sort of think like, what else could I do with this? And I started just playing some music over over the field recordings, and it sort of turned into what FM Forest is. Not just in Portland, but around the Pacific Northwest, whether it's Mount Hood National Forest or Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. Spent a lot of time foraging out there and just exploring the trails and the lakes around there, and started bringing the field recorders out there as well. Yeah, just got a solid body of recordings of whether it's lakes, streams, birds, insects, and then just putting music to it. So that's kind of the initial start of it, how it happened.
Cool.
Yeah.
You use that word foraging. Do you think of yourself as kind of foraging for sounds? Are you looking for something particular? Or are you just excited by possibility and prepared to capture whatever comes your way? How do you kind of approach that?
What I'm trying to do with these sounds is capture a time and place in these forests. When I'm there, it's usually by myself or with my girlfriend, but a lot of these times when it's just me getting these sounds. And when you're there sitting on a log, or like if you find a good comfortable spot, I'm going to pretty remote locations. It's not like on a trail. It's not around other people, hopefully not around other people. I'm trying to capture the mood of this environment, that when you are there, I'm trying to remove the human of it, like, and just capture what is there. So that's really a goal, is like, what is this sound in space right now? So that's something I try to do when I'm out there, is capture that. And even out in the middle of nowhere, it's difficult to get non-human sounds. Like every 15 minutes there'll be an airplane that flies by, or something will come out of nowhere that you're not expecting, even in places like that. Or even like from miles away, you'll hear a gunshot or four-wheelers, something like that. So it's difficult, but it's part of the process of getting these sounds. So yeah, it's really rewarding to capture these, and putting them to the music is a whole other aspect of it.
When you were beginning to collect these sounds, and you mentioned that you then, once you had quite a few, you asked yourself, what else could I do with them? What was your process for the composition? Did you want to sort of write into them, or write responsively, or how did you what sort of reverence did you have for these moments in time that you were capturing, and then what did you want to do with that?
I knew I wanted to put music to them and not just have them be their own thing. And yeah, that was a question I would ask myself. It's like, what is that? I tried a few different things out musically with them, but what really started to stick was getting the tracks, into Logic. And then I was trying to think of the sound recordings as their own pieces of music in themselves. So, if there's a bird singing or a wind going through trees, finding where the music fits in with those. So it's like, if the wind picks up, let that breathe, let that be its own piece of the music. Then when it subsides a bit, then I could come in with some synths or whatever I have as the music part of it. So I was really thinking them as pieces of music that had already sort of been composed, that I was trying to like fit my own things into. So that was really how the first album came about, was that process. And the first album came about very quickly. I probably recorded it in like 2 weeks. And it was really a process of like, I needed to get it out, and I needed to record this, and just get it to these pieces of field recordings. And it was really an exciting thing. Like, it was just really, I was super motivated to like get these songs out. And the music part of it, it's almost improvised. I don't spend a lot of time going back and re-recording things. So it's really like off the cuff almost, in how I do it.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because they do have a really, really beautiful and natural fluidity to them that I think lends itself to the format where, I don't want to call them backing tracks, but there's these environmental grounds upon which you're adding your music, and it doesn't feel overly worked. Much in the same way that a natural soundscape is not worked. It just is what it is. I think they are quite beautiful in that way. It's also interesting that you started the project. Interesting to me that you started the project during the pandemic, because I had a similar experience where the music that I was working on during the pandemic, I started to feel kind of exhausted of myself, and not getting to play with other people. And I in New York City started to make field recordings that were either less beautiful or differently beautiful, depending on your perspective, because it was like subway trains, and, people in the park and whatever, but using those soundscapes as something that I could react to, respond to. And I think that's probably a lot of a way that a lot of artists, dealt with the isolation of that time, was to kind of, find different opportunities for engagement.
Sure.
One of the unique things about FM Forest is that this project has been going on for 5 years. And until today, most people didn't know who the artist, the living, breathing artist behind FM Forest was.
Yeah. Yeah. That was extremely intentional. Another aspect of creating this project was really having it be about the music and not the musician. And I do juggle with that idea a lot, because there have been times where I've turned down shows because of that, because it's like, I don't know how to marry those things, like playing a show. Do I put a screen in front of it? Do I have a pre-recorded show that I just set up, and then I can just sit in the audience and no one would know it was me, and have it play itself essentially. And a big factor initially with it too was the label Project Villain that puts these records out. There is a big sense of being anonymous in that community too.
I see.
I feel like I know the label owner quite well, but I don't know what he looks like. I don't know where in the world he lives. I don't know a lot of aspects about them, but it's really been connection through the music itself. And with past projects, I feel like I've been connected with them a lot about who I am, and like the stories are very related to my life. But with this one, I really just wanted it to be about the music. And even coming on here, I thought about it too. It's like, well, do I hide my identity? But I thought, like, I don't think it matters that much in the grand scheme, and I don't think it affects the music ultimately. So yeah, here I am.
It's cool to hear your story behind it, because for those of you who know FM Forest but are only now learning that it's Hunter Skowron, is that you're not a shy person. There's a lot of content. You've had other musical projects. You've made a lot of videos that that feature yourself. Doing sometimes like funny and outlandish things. So it wasn't a choice of like, I don't want anyone to know that I'm too shy. So that makes it even more creatively interesting. That it was that kind of a choice. So you wanted it to be about the music. And the music is extraordinary. Did it in any way change your relationship to the music or the process?
Yeah, I mean, it was because there was this aspect of not being tied to it. Like going back to it, it's like turning down some music festivals or turning down gigs that would probably been really fun, or shows that would have been fun, like waiting for the right time to do it, or the way that I thought it would be best to unveil it. Definitely shaped a lot of the process of what it meant to be anything other than just the record, So, coming on here and doing this is kind of a step into what's next for the project, and playing live shows and being more involved in that aspect of it.
And what's how do you want people to experience this music? Where's the best place for them to get it? Does the label sell the vinyl direct, or vinyl copies still available?
They're probably all sold out, but it's all on Spotify. It is on Bandcamp. I do every once in a while get some artist copies that I create more, they come with a book that's already, but with these sessions where I get sounds, I also bring a Polaroid camera, and I capture Polaroids of the settings. So if people do get the albums directly from me, they come with like a series of Polaroids as well.
Oh wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, so there's that aspect too. So there's a lot of cool user created content on YouTube, music videos and stuff like that,
nice.
That people have made. So it's fun to see what people come up with visually with it. So yeah, there's a lot out there.
I think some of the reviews that I've read, and also an impression that I got when I read it, was that it's very aligned with some of the Japanese ambient music from the early 80s.
Right.
The Kankyo and Gaku sort of movement. Was that something that you were aware of, and you loved that music and you kind of sought inspiration, or is that just a sort of coincidental adjacency?
Yeah, I would say it's partially coincidental. I knew of it. I knew mainly Hiroshi Yoshimura and the album Green, and that was slowly becoming a favorite of mine and very influential. Since making FM Forest and releasing this music, I've been told the same thing, like that it seems very adjacent to that. And I've gone and learned a lot more about those musicians. And I wrote some of them down here that have been influenced, so I don't butcher the names too much. But Haruomi Hosono, an EP called Watering a Flower, Takashi Kokubo, Water, Shiho Yabuki, In the Body is a Message of the Universe. So those are some other ones that have been really influential since learning about it. But influentially, it's really goes back to not this type of music for me. It's a lot, I mean, it is a lot more ambient stuff, but if you go back like to the very beginning with my influences with music, but then it really does fit in with this. It's some Super Nintendo soundtracks, actually. One is a game called Secret of Evermore. Jeremy Soule is the composer for that. He went on to do like the Elder Scrolls games. And that was his first score he ever did. And then, you know, like the Super Metroid soundtrack, when you land on the planet, it's not music, it's like a thunderstorm, and then the music slowly comes in. But with Secret of Evermore, it's one of the first games where, you know, there's like samples of forest, and it's like a RPG. So, you know, it's a 30-40 hour game, so there's long chunks where you're just walking through a forest with just, you know, 16-bit ambience. So hearing that kind of stuff as a kid was really inspiring, to know that there's more than just regular video game music out there, and kind of makes you think about other things creatively. And then going into it more, you know, some Aphex Twin influential, the ambient stuff there. A big influence is David Sylvian for me. His album Gone to Earth, there's a whole second, there's two, it's like a double disc album. The second one is all just ambient music, and they're all sort of songs that are vignettes of like times and places, kind of what we were talking about earlier. There's like, one of his songs is Sunlight Seen Through the Towering Trees. And Upon This Earth in General is the name of the album. So those were really big influences for me. Some Harold Budd, Pavilion of Dreams by Harold Budd. I never really got into Brian Eno, but I've heard that kind of stuff too. I mean, I do like some of his stuff, the Apollo soundtrack, and he did an album with Harold Budd called The Pearl that's really influential. So I would say that those were big influences going into this, more so than the Japanese stuff. But I do see the connection now, and it's honestly, hearing those reviews and like being mentioned in the same names as some of these people, it's really really honored to even be like associated with that. So
and there's not a lot of or at least, you know, there's not a lot of easily accessible information about those composers. Because in you know, as I was trying to prepare for this conversation and wondering about that connection, I wanted to learn more, and it's really hard to find. I mean, maybe if I were able to speak Japanese, and there would be, you know, short videos by, you know, Japanese admirers of that music who would have more information. But in English language YouTube, there's like almost nothing. But one thing that really strikes me is how there seems to be this attraction to taking, you know, natural sounds and then reflecting upon them with the most, you know, synthetic of human instruments.
Exactly.
Literally synthesizers. And not just synthesizers, but a lot of times even FM synthesizers, which I think of as some of the most, you know, like unnatural sounding, you know, in a beautiful way. But and I wondered about that sort of contrast, because you play guitar, you sing, but I feel like is there maybe a little bit of guitar on some tracks of some of these, but it's mostly synths.
There's one almost like a prequel album called Before the Forest that's all, I mean, it's a mix of, there is some guitar on there, like very lo-fi sound, but the three actual albums are all synthesizers and, you know, digital pianos and stuff like that. So kind of what you were saying about the contrast, like that was very intentional with that idea of like these two different universes sort of combining in a way. And the name FM Forest, it can be, you know, it can be the FM synthesis. You know, some people think FM radio. I have thought about doing like a side project called AM Forest and having it just all be like guitar in the forest. So could be a little, you know, change up. But most of the stuff has been recorded with, I mean, the first album particularly was with mainly FM synthesis with I had a DX7, so I used that quite a bit. But then like the main thing I used was a Yamaha DSR 2000, which it's basically, from what I've read, it's like a DX21, but almost in like a toy keyboard.
Okay.
What I really like about it is that there's like a little, you can program it in a very, it's almost like you program it with like a Yamaha toy keyboard, but it's got this little like D-pad almost that you can go through all the parameters and change on the fly.
Right.
So you can like hear it being changed in real time, which is really cool. So I really love that keyboard. So I use that a lot. The second album, a lot of DX7, but also Casio CZ1. So I think is that like phase distortion or it's something not FM, but it's still like interesting how you have to edit the sounds. So yeah, there's definitely a mix of that contrast of synthesized sounds and the forest. And I think that some people try to emulate sounds from the forest with these, but I really wanted to just focus on, again, what we were talking about earlier is like, what was that feeling of being in that place and how can I make that music? Right. How can I make that like a song? So when programming sounds, that was my goal, was like to really tap into like, what was that feeling of being in that place, like by that lake or by that river or by those trees. So that was really the intent with the sounds chosen.
Interesting. So, you mentioned that there's a real improvisatory approach to everything. You're not like working out parts and then re-recording them 50 times in spacebar and Command C and whatever. Which is great. And like, as I said, I think that really comes through and is really sort of honors the form. Like the form that you've chosen is reflected in the process. But it sounds like you spend some time getting the right timbres, getting the right sounds. So that part you'll work on, and once you're feeling something, then you'll start
for sure. Getting those soundscapes in there, and then kind of going through and feeling what sound matches that mood, and then starting to shape the song. And again, it's really just like a flow of consciousness musically. And that's especially apparent with this new one, Solitude in 6 movements. Those were done as almost like rehearsal sessions. Like I had no intent of even having it as a solid body of work, but it was recorded directly onto a 1/4-inch tape and just, one take. And there was something really special at, capturing that just like on the fly sound, and then hearing it as one solid body of work was really, once I started listening back to the tape, it was really cool to just hear like the sessions, the rehearsals, or the practices just like flowing into one another. I was like, oh, there's something here. So that was almost like it just kind of like created itself.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. What's your process for, selection? I imagine that you have a fairly large library of field recordings, right? So do you just sort of remember particularly special ones? Do you go through and select and say, I want to have some kind of an arc, or what's that process like?
The process with that is it starts almost like in a storytelling form. So with every release, I write a short story that goes with it. And there's a lot that goes into the planning of like, how does the short story align with what I want the sound to be or what I want the album to be like. So there's a lot of connection there. The process from there is with the field recordings, there's places that I go, where I live now. I live in Washington. It's like in 5 acres of pretty much untouched wood. So there is streams that sometimes come, like after a rain, and there'll be a stream that will form and kind of go through the property, and then it'll be gone in 3-4 days when it dries up. So when that happens, there's this unique time, again, like going back to time and place. You wouldn't see it from 15-20 feet away, but you could hear it, and you could hear that there's something there. And then when you go down this little hill, there's all of a sudden this little area, it's not much bigger than this little area here, but it's its own little micro universe, like this little babbling stream is running through it. And within 3 days, there'll be sorrel that pops up that wasn't there before. There will be animals that will come there. I learned on your last podcast that you love frogs. So there'll be frogs there that weren't there before.
Right.
And there's this special connection as a human observer of these spaces that I want to try and share these stories of. Mm-hmm. So the process of making the music, again, I don't know if I'm directly answering your question, but the process is really trying to capture those stories of these places that only exist for a fleeting time and then are gone, you know?
Interesting. So is that what is the, now I've listened to Solitude in 6 Movements, but only today were you kind enough to, give me bring me the LP which has the book inside.
Yeah.
So I've heard the music, but I haven't gone through the poetry in the book.
Yeah.
Is the story that you're referencing something that's sort of internal to you, or is it sort of articulated in the poetry, or what is the story of Solitude in 6 Movements?
I would say it's the stories that go along with them. They range from being like directly, like a companion piece. Like you could read, I would say with this one, you could sit down and read the story along with it, and it would make a lot of sense with the music. Mm. Some of them are just, almost like magical, realistic stories that, you could interpret some of it with the music, but it's its own thing that tells a different story that's almost like, can go with the music, but it's its own thing. With this one in particular, with the story, this first song is called Midday Sun, and then it goes into the next morning. And that was sort of the idea behind it is staying in one place and watching time shift and like the day shift into the next day and the experiences that happen throughout that time frame. So that was that was really inspiration. And with the stories that go along with that, it's very you could follow along almost like chapter to chapter for each song. So the stories are really their own thing. The label that puts these out is really, they really go all out to make the physical releases an art piece, and it's so cool to have the option to have the stories go along with them and have them be their own thing. And it really makes me use a different part of my brain to make these stories that go along with them. And I'm always thinking about like, what are the stories behind these songs, and how can you put them to poems or stories, and all the photos that go along with them are taken by me. So this album cover is a river in Hood River, Oregon. So thinking about that aspect too of like, how are these albums visually represented as well is a big thing.
Yeah, the presentation is absolutely gorgeous, and it's been much talked about, but how much is lost when we only stream audio and we don't get to have the sort of the tactile experience. Yeah, it's really beautiful, and it kind of reflects, again what you're saying. You see these these like fleeting micro universes that pop up and on your property and after rain, and it's like there's something sort of spiritually similar about the project in the way that it's so complete with your visual art, your writing. Yeah. Props to Villain for doing for doing it right. Now I was thinking about going back to Hiroshi Yoshimura and Green. He released 2 versions of the record. You can listen to it with sound effects or just the music, and maybe that was like a record label thing. I'd love to know if that was his decision or not. But do you feel, it sounds to me like, and it feels listening to the music, that for you the field recordings are kind of essential to the whole thing? Would you say that's true? Or
it's interesting with that. I think he preferred the non sound effect version.
Really?
Yeah. So that's always interesting, because I was introduced to it with the sound effects, and that was like, to me, like part of the story of the songs. But he apparently that was not his preferred version.
So I don't know about this. Were they his sound effects? Do you know, or
I think
was that
they
like
were.
a label said, "Let's go out and get some nature recordings"? And put
I think based on like, I mean, when you see photos of him, he always has the field
Right.
recording stuff. So I think they were. So I'm not sure why he felt that way with his, but I think about that with FM Forest a lot. Like, does it need the sound effects with it? You know, does it need that approach? I think there's some that don't have sound effects, and if they don't, I try to really tell the story with the title. But in my eyes, I think that it is important, and I think that it sort of is an instrument. Like I was saying earlier, like a lot of these songs are inspired by these soundscapes. So I think that it is pretty integral.
I think it can be as well, and I think sometimes it gets kind of these genres get kind of a bad rap because people think about like shopping mall go stores from the 90s or whatever, and it's like, oh, soothing yoga meditation music, and it's like it feels Muzak-y, you know what I
definitely.
mean? And so it can be dismissed, but I think that in my experience of collecting field recordings, it's something that can inspire us to just listen so much more deeply. And listening to things deeply is so important and so revealing. And we can learn so much about our environment, ourselves. By it's just like paying attention. Right? The place that can take you, and then how you react musically. I think that's why I kind of laughed when his being like, I don't think of them as sound effects. It's very interesting to hear that maybe he didn't even want them there. But to me, if I'm going to put, if I'm writing music and I'm going to put something, that's going to coexist with the music that I've written or that I'm performing, like I want it to be intentional. It's not just like dressing. It's not just like I'm adding like reverb.
Exactly.
Like the bird reverb or something. And I feel when the use of the field recordings in your, like in the mix, it's pretty subtle. But I feel like it adds a lot. It's not just like window dressing.
And I've thought about two extremes where it's like keeping it subtle, and then I've thought about the other extreme of like, I want to go to a specific state and like stay in a cabin and record in Maine and like stay there for a month and just record in one place and like get sounds of loons that, like, I think there are loons in Oregon, but it's not as prevalent. So it's like there's that aspect. It's like, well, maybe like travel around and record these in very specific places. And then it's the other aspect. It's like, do I focus more on the music or do I focus more on like that aspect of the project? You mentioned environment just a little bit ago, and I wanted to know if you've ever heard of the entourage effect.
No.
So another aspect of when I started doing this was I was working at a botanical extract company, which sold terpenes.
Okay.
So for people who don't know what a terpene is, the best way I like to describe it is, if you've ever smelt a rose, you know what a terpene is. It's the chemical compounds that make that smell. The smell of an orange, the smell of grass. Everything has its own chemical compounds that make those specific smells. And I was working for this terpene company, and they had a science advisory board with a scientist, Dr. Ethan Rousseau, who was really involved with the studies of how smells make you feel. He had come up with the term the entourage effect. So that's another aspect of this. Is I got really interested in that. I was doing interviews with him for that job and talking to him about that. For instance, when you're in the forest, when you're in the middle of the woods and you smell pine trees, those are specific terpenes. And like, what is a pine tree smell? How does that make you feel? When I ask people that, I hear a lot of like relaxation, or some people associate it with Christmas time, which makes them feel good because they're around family and they're around friends, and it's a joyous time for a lot of people. So that is the entourage effect. So smells and these smells in their environments can really affect you emotionally. So that's another aspect of this too, is is how do these environments and their smells in a way make you feel. So that's a big part of being out in the forest, is stepping into, I really think of these places as almost different dimensions. Like I think about being in the middle of the woods and being in a different dimension in a way. Or like, I think about, I don't go here, but like at the bottom of the ocean, that's like another place I would think of like its own universe or its own dimension. But when you mentioned environments, I was thinking about how these places make you feel and how the smells around make you feel as well.
I really like your approach, and I'm very moved by your approach of, when you said you'd like to do something in Maine, for instance. You said I'd want to rent a cabin for a month. So it's not just like I want to go to Maine and get some loon sounds, have a lobster roll, get out, and then I'm going to make my jams with my loon sounds.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to really immerse yourself. Because I think that it seems to me that you recognize that to really experience and potentially capture and be able to translate some of the beauty of that environment takes time. It takes like a sensitivity that you can't rush. You can't just turn it on. All right, now I'm going to suck it all up and I'm going to go. You have to be patient and slow. And I think that's a virtue that is maybe diminishing in our current culture. And I think that it comes through in your art, and that's why or that's one of the qualities about it that I find so beautiful. It's and thinking about this sort of holistic approach to the art making and the translation of the experience.
It's funny you say that, because I mentioned foraging earlier. So we do a lot of mushroom foraging for morels and lobsters, chanterelles, matsutakis, that kind of stuff. And I don't remember who told me this, but a woman once said to me, when you get to a location where these mushrooms grow, it's not like you show up and you look down the ground and they're right there. Morels can be like so hard to find. And she had mentioned to me once, when you get to a location where you're going to start foraging, sit for 30 minutes, find a place to sit comfortably and just absorb the surroundings, absorb the environment. And, it sounds like, that wouldn't work. It sounds like, well, if I look around, I'll probably find one quicker. But absorbing that environment and really being a part of it, it really helps. Like it has vastly improved, especially with matsutakis. It's especially improved finding them. So to your point about being in these places, not just getting out of the car, record, okay, I got it, I'm going to go home. It's really about finding the soul of these places. Like what is this forest in Maine? What is, this specific area of, a place in Trout Lake, Washington, where it's, you're in lava beds, like what are these places? So it's really important to me.
It's clear to me that you have these very deep experiences when you're in the environment. When you take it back home and you're conceiving of it as a piece, as an art piece, how do you experience your field recordings? Like, how do you maybe analyze isn't the best word, but how do you review them and what are you looking for and what's the best way for you to sort of reconnect to the recording, to try to capture the experience that you have that inspired you to make it in the first place?
I am first looking for patterns and sounds. So, the first guest you had was so amazing because there was so much information to learn about bird sounds. And I go out and I hear so many birds when I'm out there. That's like the primary thing that I hear. And so I'm looking for patterns and repetition in what they're doing out there. And, sometimes you get a call and response that they're having out there. And I'm looking for stories within these sounds, whether it's, birds chatting with each other or really specific patterns in like streams or if like bubbles are popping up in the water, things like that really are ingrained in like what it was like to be in that spot. So that's really what I'm looking for out there. One of the challenges is a lot of places sound very similar. And I wish that there was maybe sometimes more variety out in the forest, because it can be tricky to differentiate, and there's some sounds that are so associated with nature, like wind going through trees, that's like, you would think that that's really easy to come by, but it's tricky, especially like with my setup. Like, it's not the most sensitive mic. So you have to wait around for a long time to get that specific sound you're looking for. And again, like, yeah, because you're in these environments that, this similar animal, like, it would be great if every once in a while I could hear a coyote or something different, but really it's about finding uniqueness in what I can get. We don't have them where I live, but where I grew up out here, we had frogs we would call them peepers. And I would love to be able to sample those, but we don't have those. So
Right.
Yeah, I'll have to make a trip here and get those. But it's really about trying to capture uniqueness in the spots I'm in.
It's interesting. I was, talking earlier about how I, pandemic lockdown, just going around trying to capture whatever environmental sounds existed in Brooklyn and then do something with them creatively, musically. A little bit later on in 2022, I went down to Mexico, and I was doing the same thing in Mexico City, but it was in Chapultepec Park, where I heard some birds that I'd never heard before.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what they were,
Yeah.
but I was just really excited about hearing something that I'd never heard before.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the attractions of field recording.
Yeah.
It gives us the possibility of a certain kind of discovery.
Yeah.
And sometimes that discovery can just be deeper listening to the familiar.
Right.
But sometimes you do have that like longing to, I just want to be in a totally different sounding forest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've been doing some underwater recordings recently,
cool.
and that's been a whole new sound world. But then same thing, certain locations, you start to be like, well, this is it's same as the way it sounded yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But even then, there's, like you were mentioning, the wind. Like, sometimes I'll be recording the exact same location, but there'll be a certain stillness that I haven't heard before.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know what in water to attribute that to.
Right.
It's something about the tides, the currents.
Yeah.
That I don't have the expertise or the measurement tools or whatever to know what's going on, but you can feel it and you can hear it, and that changes things just subtly, but sometimes kind of profoundly if you've acquainted yourself with that.
Kind of going back to what I was saying about sitting and just absorbing the environment. It could be the same with sound too.
Right.
You might hear something you didn't 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So it is sometimes a waiting game. And then sometimes you get lucky and it's just like you get a great sound right away. But it's a big part of the process. Yeah. And it's a big part of the process of being able to go out to these spots and plan that whole aspect of it. Because sometimes it could take 3 hours to get to a spot I want to go to, just to get sound recordings. So there's a dedication to it.
So where are you taking it now? Do you have plans to do more with this project?
Yeah, working on follow up to this, a full length, and have each album is sort of themed around a season. So the first one was really springy. The second one was fall, winter themed. And I would like to I haven't done like a summer album yet. Okay. So summer's next on the list, and that's what I'm working on now. And really trying to simplify even more what the music aspect of it is. I have this digital piano that I just really love to use right now, and it has like 8 sounds on it, but it feels so natural to play. And this was actually all recorded on that.
Okay.
And just continuing to use that and really focusing on a little bit different, actually, in how I was saying with these, a lot of it is improvised, really working on the composition with these ones. And I've been sitting on a lot of these songs for a while and really practicing them and building them into a little bit of a different way that I've done before. But at its heart, it's the same, soundscapes, and going to some new locations this time, some places that It's interesting. It's trying to think of like how to capture the sound of summer or like the warmth of summer. And there are things where I live in the Pacific Northwest. Crickets don't come out until like right now. Like the other night I heard the first cricket of the year. So it's like that's something I'm trying to do, is like, capturing what it means to be in a specific season. So that's a goal for me.
And are you going to plan to do most of the field recordings in Washington, near where you live now?
Yeah, Washington, a couple spots in Oregon. Something I didn't mention earlier about the season aspect. We're talking about observing and being present in these environments. And one of my albums, FM Forest albums, is called Tomorrow's Winter. And something that goes along with this observation and being in these places is, I'd said that each has a different season theme, but I really am trying to like think about those times in between seasons too. Like right now where it's August 16th and like fall's right around the corner.
Right.
And I remember I heard a quote 10 years ago. Someone was walking on the street and I heard them talking about, she said, August 15th, I felt it. And she was talking about that fall was coming. And, there's these subtle things you realize, like the first leaves changing and the first, the first day where it's a little colder, or like the days get shorter. And there's these things that we don't always notice in our day-to-day life. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, fall's here, or like, oh, it's going to be winter. So that's another aspect of these, is really trying to not just visually, but with the songs again, like portray those really subtle changes in the world as a new season approaches. And it's like, when you really think about it, it's like there could be like 30 seasons a year, these like micro seasons. So maybe there's already terms for that, but I'm always trying to look like, when's that first leaf change, or like, I'm always looking like, where we live, we can see the sunset every day. It's a little shorter again now, so there's that aspect too, of like capturing that essence of fleeting seasons into the next.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would imagine, I don't know, but I would imagine that other cultures have had different ways of describing middle seasons.
Exactly.
And transitional times. And as we get closer to fall, it's not just that, at least in my experience, it's not just that the days start getting shorter, but it's just like the light even lingers differently.
Exactly.
And, there's all sorts of subtle changes.
Yeah. And that's like what you're saying, like, light changes and the world changes. And again, like trying to put that into music, whether it's through sound, music, both. That's a big theme of this.
So you brought a couple recordings today.
Yeah.
And let's just give them a listen, and then you can tell us about what's happening. Maybe I'll try to guess where we are. Or we'll see how it goes.
Cool.
This is number 1. I love the I love the emphasis on the water. I love being able to hear the birds like deep in the background. And it's like a photographer like taking a landscape or something. Like where do you put the focus? And,
right.
And it's really beautiful. Is this on your property?
Yeah, this is where we're at. From that recording, like how wide do you think this body of water is, or this flowing water is?
It sounds like a stream to me, but not a river. You know, I guess if I had to guess, I would say 10 feet.
It's probably 1.5 feet wide.
Wow.
It's probably just about that, nothing more. And that's what I was mentioning earlier about how after a rain will happen, this little stream will form, and it will just be there for a couple days and then gone again. And I wanted to really capture that before it was gone. So I basically put the microphone as close as I could to the top of the water. It's kind of interesting because, yeah, when I'm there in the moment, you know, I have headphones on, I have the mic, I'm listening to it in real time. But, you know, the goal with that is I want to get that water sound. But then you go back and listen to it, and yeah, there's the birds in the distance. There's like a chipmunk or a squirrel at one point. So there is these elements that you weren't anticipating, but it really adds to that soundscape and that environment. That's the first one. And it is interesting too, because when it's not raining and when that water's gone, you know, you can tell that it's been carved out, you know, and it's really neat because you can go through when the water's gone. I mean, you could do this when the water's there, but it's easier when it's gone, and find rocks that are so smooth, like, because when the water happens, and banks of clay, and you can kind of just really experience these tiny little slices of the world that you might on a normal day just walk over if you're hiking through the woods and not think about. But, you know, when you really zoom in under a lens there's its whole world, you know, within itself. So yeah, that sound was really trying to capture that fleeting river before it was gone, or stream before it was gone.
You know, as you've sort of learned the land that you're on, through experience and observation, do these streams, you know, reappear in the same place?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
yeah, for sure.
So this one might come back in a new form.
Yeah, same exact place, but it's always slightly different year to year. And, you know, if it's a heavy rainfall, it's going to be way bigger. And there's I have pictures of this. I can show them to you, but there's little waterfalls that form. You know, they're like 3-4 feet tall that go over tree branches. So it's really cool to see how it changes per rainstorm, especially in the winter there when it's raining all the time. It's just like it can be, you know, you could hear it from, you know, a couple thousand feet away, but during the summer you have to go right after a rainstorm and go right up to it to get those sounds. So yeah, it is evolving, and it's every day it's a little different down there. Yeah. So it's really cool.
Have you heard of the do you know the recording device, the Audio Moth?
No.
They're designed to be very affordable field recorders that you leave in the field, so they can run on a battery for a month or something. I mean, cool. But that's the idea, and it's sort of for you know, soundscape analysis, like soundscape ecology for analysis, like how many species of you know, different species of bird are we going to hear over time or whatever, and it could be really interesting. I think they're like $100 each. Or something. Yeah, I'm imagining putting one out there, and from, you know, when this new, you know, micro ecosystem emerges after the rainfall, and having a complete recording until it's disappeared again.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Because I'm really interested. You were talking about, you know, frogs, like they come and they go, right?
Yeah.
The water comes, the frogs come, the water goes, they leave, and hearing the sort of the contours of how the animal life follows the water.
Yeah, that would be really cool. That's a good idea. I got to do that.
Cool. Yeah. All right, let's listen to the next one.
Sure.
Cool.
Yeah, when do you think that was taking place? What time of the day? Or
I guess I would have to guess very midday. It sounds to me like I'm gonna like 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, that was probably 5:45, 6 in the morning.
Wow, so it's like the beginning. It's like a dawn chorus.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was something I wasn't really expecting when moving out there was to be able to experience that so regularly.
Yeah.
And it's pretty wild to be woken up by that. And that particular morning, I could hear all these different varieties of birds out there. So I just grabbed the stuff and ran out. And I was lucky because it was a Sunday morning. So it was like no cars down the hill, anything like that. And I just really was able to dial that in and get, you know, who knows how many different types of birds are there. And there's squirrels and chipmunks in the background. But it's been really neat living there to see the ebbs and flows of like times of year when certain birds come, like early spring, you know, the robins start coming back. And there was a particular robin that would come right outside of our window every morning at like 4:30 and just start going crazy. And like I could start telling that particular robin just because of how it would make its particular songs in the morning all the way on the other side of the woods, like that same robin. And there was one morning about 6 a.m. where there's a couple owls that live on the property. And there was one morning, you know, they start, you know, you hear them at night, but then they start again at like 5:30 in the morning. And there was some crazy commotion. And one of the owls had swooped down the front yard and picked up a rabbit. So all of a sudden the forest was, you could hear this rabbit like echoing through the forest, like, you know, as it's in the owl's grasp. And that I could tell that same robin came back and started doing that sound, but it was going around the entire perimeter of the forest near us and like making warning sounds. And I could tell like that's that same robin. So it's interesting, like learning the characters of these birds and where their place is on this particular bit of land. So it's been really cool in that regard. But yeah, that's a straight up dawn chorus.
What time of year was that?
That was May. That was in May. So yeah. And it doesn't sound like that anymore in the mornings.
Right.
So those birds, I'm no expert in this, but they have gone elsewhere.
Yeah,
so
the
it's
migration.
Yeah, so it's being replaced with different sounds now. You know, again, like that fleeting time frame where every morning it sounded like that was, you know, it really was dawn chorus. Yeah.
Do you ever use Merlin?
My girlfriend does, and she's been able to ID some really cool birds out there. Yeah. I should start doing that.
Yeah, it's fun. You know? I have kind of mixed feelings about it because sometimes I can find myself, you know, like everything, being so preoccupied with the app that's like, wait, you're not even listening to them anymore.
Sure,
you know?
yeah.
But it is really it's you know, when you're learning this stuff, some people, we have a bird club down the street every Saturday morning, and you know, they don't need Merlin for local birds. They know every single one.
Yeah,
easily,
yeah.
You know, but I'm not quite there.
Yeah.
So it's fun to kind of be able to spot all the different species. And I am not a morning person.
Yeah.
So I only did one dawn chorus this year back in May during the spring migration, but it was pretty amazing to be, you know, Prospect Park, which is the biggest park we have in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
It had, I think there were like 60 different species that morning.
That's really cool.
It was really cool. And there was, you know, a lot of automobile noise and whatever, but it's, nevertheless, it was still pretty special to hear that many different species.
Yeah. And that's like a lucky thing to have, you know, especially in a city, to be able to experience that. Yeah. So that's cool.
Man, thank you so much for having this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to hear the next record.
Yeah.
And
me too.
And I hope that to all of our listeners and viewers, you gotta check this stuff out, because it's really wonderful music. And like I said, I think it what you're doing is it's I remember telling you this a long time ago. I think of you as like like an artist in the truest sense, because of the way that you're not just like a producer of objects or of songs or whatever. You have such a holistic way of you know, connecting what you create with your spirit and the way you experience the world and observe the world. And I just think it's awesome. So
well, I greatly appreciate
much for
that.
being here.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime. Thank you.
All right, man.
Yeah, thanks.